You know, some names in history, they just carry this immense weight, don't they? Like al-Ghawth, al-Azam.
Mm-hmm.
It means something like the manifestation of Allah's all-powerful attribute, the one you'd call on for, well, urgent help.
Right, the ultimate recourse.
And then you have al-Qat al-Azam, the pole, the center, the summit of spiritual evolution. Some even say the spiritual ruler of the world.
Exactly. And both of these incredibly powerful titles point to one figure, Hazrat Abdul Qadir Jilani.
That's who we're focusing on today.
Yep. And in this deep dive, we're really going to try and unpack the basics of his life, his influence. We're using the biography Hazrat Abdul Qadir Jilani Radiallahu as our guide here.
Right. The idea is to get a feel for what made him such a revered figure.
Our mission, if you like, is to find those key moments, those guiding principles from the biography that really defined his journey and why he still matters so much, especially in Islamic Sufism.
Okay, let's jump right in. Early life. He was born in Al-Jil, modern-day Iran, around 470 AH.
Which puts it 1077 or 1078 CE in the Gregorian calendar.
And the biography actually confirms this, doesn't it? It mentions he was 18 when he got to Baghdad in 488 AH.
Right, the same year that the scholar Al-Tamim passed away. It's a helpful anchor point.
And his lineage is pretty remarkable from the get-go.
Oh, definitely. His mother, Kar Fatima, her ancestry goes straight back to the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, through his grandson Hussein.
Which, culturally and religiously, that connection would have been huge back then.
Immense significance.
And his mother, she plays such a key role in this early story. He wants to go to Baghdad, seek knowledge, be around wise people.
And her reaction is just amazing. She gives him his entire inheritance from his father, 80 gold pieces.
But she divides it, right? 40 for him, 40 for his brother.
Yeah, and then she does this incredibly symbolic thing. She sews his 40 pieces right into the lining of his coat.
Such a practical, caring detail.
It really is. And then the instruction she gives him.
Always tell the truth, no matter what.
That absolute insistence. And then that farewell, telling him she wouldn't see him again until the day of judgment. It paints a picture of, well, incredible piety and resolve.
It totally sets the stage for his character, that focus on truthfulness.
And it gets tested almost immediately.
Ah, the caravan story. Leaving Hamadan, ambushed by, 60 bandits?
Yes, 60 highwaymen. They're robbing everyone. And they get to this young Abdul Qadir. What have you got?
And he just tells them, 40 gold pieces, sewn under my arm.
They didn't believe him at first, did they?
No. They probably thought he was joking or just, simple. But he kept saying it.
Until it reached their leader. The chief asks him, finds the gold exactly where he said.
And the chief is just stunned. Like, why would you do that? Your money was safe.
And his answer?
Simple. I promised my mother I'd always speak the truth.
That's the moment, isn't it? The power of just raw honesty.
It completely disarmed them.
It did more than that. The chief apparently just broke down, full of remorse for his life of crime.
And then all 60 of them.
All 60 followed suit. Witnessing that, they repented, took Abdul Qadir's hand, sought forgiveness. The biography says they were the very first to pledge allegiance to him.
Incredible. Even as a teenager, that kind of impact.
That's an amazing foreshadowing of his influence.
So he gets to Baghdad at 18. A huge center of learning and culture.
It wasn't all smooth sailing initially, right? The biography mentions he found the city full of sedition, mischief, and intrigue.
Right, he felt he needed to protect his faith.
Exactly. So he felt this pull to leave, to go into seclusion in the desert. Just him and his Quran.
Seeking that purification, this took him out into the deserts around Baghdad.
A period that was absolutely crucial for him. Years of intense spiritual struggle.
Fighting temptations, wasn't it? The devil appearing in different forms.
Yeah, confronting worldly desires and this constant battle against his own ego, his nafs. He eventually described it as making his ego his prisoner.
And the asceticism sounds extreme.
Oh, it was. Eating only wild grasses and roots, then just water, then apparently neither food nor water nor sleep for periods, living in ruins in Kark.
Walking barefoot on thorns without feeling pain. Climbing cliffs. It's hard to even imagine.
The discipline was just immense. After 7 years of this, he felt a divine permission to re-enter Baghdad.
But even then, that initial attempt to leave again because of the city's atmosphere.
Right, he gets to the city gate, ready to retreat again with just his Quran.
And then the voice.
This mysterious inner voice tells him, return, you must serve the people.
And it reassures him about his faith being protected, a real turning point.
Definitely. He then goes into deep meditation, praying for guidance.
Which leads to the encounter in Muzaffaria.
With the stranger, who turns out to be Sheikh Hamed al-Dabbas, a spiritual guide, a sheikh.
And this stranger somehow knew what Abdul Qadir had prayed for the day before.
Apparently so. And then he just slams the door.
Huh. Quite an introduction.
But it made Abdul Qadir realize, okay, this man is deeply connected to Allah. He knew this was going to be his first real teacher in mysticism.
So he seeks him out, and the story of arriving at Sheikh Hamed's Take the Sufi Lodge is pretty intense too.
It is a freezing, cold, rainy night. An invisible hand guides him there.
Doors locked, lights out.
And Sheikh Hamed apparently knew he was coming through divine inspiration.
And then the repeated ritual bathing 7 times because of nocturnal emissions in ice-cold water.
It emphasizes the hardship, the spiritual state he was in, maybe even a kind of test.
But the next morning, Sheikh Hamed welcomes him.
Warmly. Greets him with joy, embraces him, even prophesies his future greatness. It's this powerful moment of acceptance. This is the start of his formal discipleship.
Under Sheikh Hamed, but it wasn't a typical student-teacher thing, was it?
Not at all. Sheikh al-Dabbas had his own unique, maybe even unconventional methods.
Like testing him.
Yeah.
Criticizing his other studies.
Yeah, telling him he was missing the wonderful food, the spiritual stuff, by looking elsewhere for knowledge.
But at the same time, praising his high spiritual rank.
Exactly. Famously saying, none of you will rise above his toe, referring to Abdul Qadir.
So these kind of contradictory signals.
Likely part of a very deliberate process, refining him, pushing him.
And meanwhile, Abdul Qadir is still studying broadly in Baghdad.
Oh yes, theology, prophetic traditions, hadith, religious law, fiqh, other sciences. He didn't stop seeking outward knowledge.
But Sheikh al-Dabbas remained his core spiritual guide.
Always. The biography says he was always being enlightened by Sheikh al-Dabbas, even while studying with many others. He also memorized the entire Quran.
And studied its interpretation, tafsir, under several scholars.
Qadi Abu Wafa al-Qail, Abu Khattab Mahfuz, Abu Hassan Muhammad al-Qadi. A solid grounding in traditional Islamic sciences. That was vital.
Then comes the receiving of the dervish cloak, the kirka.
Right, from Qadi Abu Sa'id al-Muharrami.
Which is significant because it's a symbol of the Prophet's mantle, spiritual inheritance. But it wasn't from Sheikh Hamed, his first guide.
That's interesting, isn't it? It shows how interconnected these Sufi lineages were. The biography traces the chain, the silsila for this cloak, right back through Hazrat Ali to Gabriel, to the divine truth itself.
Underscoring the importance of that connection.
Hugely important. And Qadi Abu Sa'id apparently said he both gave and received his own cloak of service from Sheikh Abdul Qadir.
Wow, a mutual recognition of status.
It seems so. And then Qadi Abu Sa'id actually gives his own school, his madrasa, at Baba Ajay to Sheikh Abdul Qadir.
Which paves the way for him to start teaching publicly.
Finally, but not until he was over 50 years old.
It seems late to start, but when he did.
The impact was immediate and powerful. His words were described as effective and miraculous. His following just exploded.
And that vision he had of the Prophet, peace be upon him, and Imam Ali.
Yes, empowering him to speak fluent Arabic, address all mankind. The Prophet breathing into his mouth 7 times, Imam Ali 6 times out of respect.
And those first words he spoke after that. The mind dove into the sea of the heart, searching for pearls of wisdom. Such a vivid image.
It really signifies this bursting forth of all the knowledge and wisdom that had built up inside him. He apparently said he felt like he had to speak or it would just overwhelm him.
Starting with just 2 or 3 students?
And growing to 70,000.
70,000, that's unbelievable. They had to expand the school.
Massively. With help from everyone, rich and poor alike. There's that touching story of the young woman and her husband donating her entire dowry.
Shows the level of devotion he inspired, and his authority wasn't just spiritual, was it?
No, he became recognized as an imam, a leader in religious law theology, a key figure for both the Shafi'i and Hanbali schools of law.
His wisdom, his prayers being answered, the miracles attributed to him, it all points to extraordinary influence.
And the description of his character is quite detailed. Soft heart, gentle, always smiling, sensitive, the best manners.
Generous, too, materially and with knowledge. Loved people.
Deeply. Especially believers, but also described as having an aristocratic character, despite his humility.
Handsome, well-dressed, spoke clearly, truthfully, without fear of criticism.
That fearlessness comes through in the story where he confronts the Caliph Hamukafi.
Over the appointment of that judge Yahya ibn Sa'id.
Right, a judge seen as unjust. Abdul Qadir speaks out publicly, very forcefully.
And the caliph actually dismissed the judge because of it.
Immediately, it shows the moral authority he wielded.
He's credited with really changing the moral atmosphere in Baghdad.
Definitely. Earned widespread love and respect, but also the fear of tyrants. People from all walks of life sought him out.
Kings, viziers, scholars,
Correct.
even Jews and Christians came for guidance.
Yes, and the biography mentions many conversions to Islam through him.
He also outlined specific qualities for a true spiritual teacher, didn't he? 12 of them.
He did, drawing on qualities from Allah, like hiding faults and compassion, qualities from the Prophet, like love and gentleness.
And from the early caliphs.
Right. Truthfulness like Abu Bakr, justice like Umar, humility like Uthman, knowledge and courage like Ali. It's a comprehensive model.
A blueprint for spiritual leadership as he saw it.
Exactly. And you see these qualities reflected in how he cared for his own followers.
Like a father to tens of thousands, it says, knew them by name, cared for worldly and spiritual needs, helped them from afar.
That's the picture painted. Very personal, very deep connection, playful with kids, respectful to elders.
Preferred the company of the poor and weak, not the powerful.
Right. And that account from his servant, Muhammad ibn al-Qadr.
13 years serving him and never saw him, like, swat a fly or even blow his nose.
It suggests an extraordinary level of, well, detachment from normal human frailties, a profound self-mastery.
How did he handle visiting rulers, sultans?
He wouldn't rise for them, apparently, but they would rise for him. He rarely accepted gifts or food from them, maintaining that spiritual independence.
Even the caliph treated his letters with reverence.
Which brings us to that other story involving the caliph and the date palm.
The beheading story. The caliph sends his vizier because he's annoyed by something Abdul Qadir said.
And Abdul Qadir just declares he'll behead him too, meaning the vizier.
The vizier is terrified, rushes back.
And the caliph is humbled, sends apologies. It just shows the sheer force of his spiritual presence.
But alongside the compassion, there was sternness.
Absolutely. When it came to matters of faith, upholding religious law, he could be very stern. Not personal anger, but anger for the sake of Allah's limits being transgressed.
There's that interesting bit about Sheikh Hamad initially being concerned about Abdul Qadir's lofty talk.
Yes, recounted by Sheikh Abu Najib al-Surawardi. But then Abdul Qadir reveals these 70 divine promises written on his palm.
Like a divine seal of approval.
Confirming his blessed status. And those promises he made to his followers.
That none would die without repenting. That good followers could intercede for sinful ones.
Yes, and that he could cover a follower's shame even from far away. That he had a book with all their names until the end of time.
And his commitment to save even the bad ones among them.
It speaks to this immense sense of responsibility, like a shepherd for his flock. The biography even compares him to a prophet for his people in that regard.
Now, despite all this intense spiritual life, he did marry.
Yes, at 51, 4 wives, following the prophet's example. This was after achieving spiritual perfection and receiving an inspired command, according to the text.
And he had many children.
49, 27 sons, 22 daughters, a large family.
And there's that poignant story about when one of his young sons died. His wives were concerned he wasn't showing much outward grief.
And his explanation is profound. He talked about his constant connection with the divine, that his compassion was vast, encompassing everything, and his view of this world being like a dream.
A different perspective on loss, rooted in that deep spiritual connection.
Exactly. It shows how his inner state influenced even his experience of grief.
Let's talk about the encounter with the devil, that famous story from the desert during Ramadan.
The classic test. The illusion appears a cloud, a spring, a date palm, this bright light.
And a voice claiming to be his Lord, making forbidden things lawful for him.
A very subtle temptation.
Yeah.
But he saw through it immediately.
I take refuge in Allah from the accursed devil.
And boom,
Yeah.
illusion vanishes. His reasoning was key. Allah's address isn't just sound, and Allah's laws don't change. Solid theological grounding.
The devil wasn't done, though, was he? Tried to tempt him with pride?
Yeah, saying, I've fooled 70 prophets with tricks like this. You should have more followers than them. Trying to inflate his ego.
But Abdul Qadir didn't take the bait.
No, he attributed his protection solely to Allah's mercy, not his own knowledge or wisdom. Complete humility.
That seems central to his philosophy, attributing everything to Allah.
Absolutely. And his view that someone with knowledge who doesn't act on it is like a donkey carrying books. Knowledge has to be lived.
And the impact was real, over 5,000 Jews and Christians converting. Over 100,000 wrongdoers repenting at his hands.
The numbers cited are staggering. It speaks to the power of his presence and teachings.
We should probably revisit those years of intense seclusion again, the sheer scale of it.
25 years wandering the deserts of Iraq, sleeping in ruins.
Including 11 years just in one ruined castle in Shustar. With that vow.
Yes, the vow to not eat or drink until he reached spiritual perfection.
And after 40 days, someone offers him bread, food.
And he refuses. He wouldn't break his vow to Allah.
Then Abu Sa'id al-Muharrami passes by, hears his body crying out from hunger.
But notes the absolute peace in his soul, a stark contrast, highlighting that victory over the physical self.
And he wouldn't leave that seclusion even then.
Not without a direct divine order, which came, according to the story, through Qadir.
The mysterious wise figure, instructing him to join Abu Sa'id.
It shows his complete reliance on that divine guidance.
And then 40 years of night vigil, praying morning prayer with the ablution from the night before, reciting the whole Quran every night.
Standing in a specific way to avoid falling asleep, the level of discipline is just hard to fathom.
Until that voice boomed, "Oh, Abdul Qadir, I did not create you to sleep."
A powerful reminder of his purpose. And when people asked him why they couldn't achieve his states or miracles,
he emphasized that everything he did, every action, was by direct divine command, not his own volition.
a crucial distinction in his view.
He also used poetry in his talks sometimes.
Yes, Yahya ibn Jina al-Adib recalled this. He specifically mentioned a verse about the soul-loving God even before creation.
My soul loved you before I ever knew you. A beautiful mystical sentiment.
The little anecdote where Yahya secretly counts the verses Abdul Qadir recites.
And Abdul Qadir calls him out on it, knowing exactly what he was doing.
Just another example of that sharp spiritual insight, that awareness.
So his daily life, once he was teaching, was this incredible blend.
Nights in prayer and meditation. Days completely dedicated to serving people.
Public sermons 3 times a week. Thousands attending.
Daily lessons. Quran commentary, hadith, theology, law, Sufism.
Afternoon consultations open to everyone.
And distributing bread to the poor every single evening before sunset prayers, rain or shine.
Fasting every day himself. And only eating after sunset prayer, always sharing his food.
A life of constant devotion and constant service.
Until his passing, Saturday, the 8th of Rabi al-Thani, 561 AH.
Which is 1166 CE. He was 91 years old.
An incredibly long and impactful life, and his tomb in Baghdad became a major site of visitation, right?
Immediately. And it still is today, a place people go for blessings, for connection.
His final words to his sons are very powerful.
To Abdul Aziz, he framed his suffering as being turned over within the knowledge of Allah, a transformation.
To Abdul Jabbar, he said only his heart felt no pain because it was purely with Allah.
And to Abdul Wahab, that final core advice, fear only Allah, hope only in Him. Entrust everything to Him. Rely only on Him. Seek unity with Him. Tawheed.
The essence of his teaching.
And his very last moments, acknowledging unseen spiritual visitors.
Saying he was the core without the shell, that he was with another even while physically there.
Indicating that deep spiritual presence, no fear of the angel of death.
And then just repeating Allah, Allah, Allah until he passed.
A powerful end to an extraordinary life.
So wrapping up this deep dive, what really stands out, that commitment to truth from the very beginning.
Absolutely. That and the sheer intensity of his spiritual discipline over decades. Plus, the depth and breadth of his knowledge, both traditional sciences and mystical insight.
And the impact. Transforming people, transforming Baghdad. His spiritual authority was undeniable.
And underlying it all, this profound compassion for everyone.
We saw so many aha moments, didn't we? The bandits, the devil, the encounters with rulers. They all teach us something profound.
They really do. Insights into pursuing knowledge, spiritual growth, the power of living by conviction, and serving others.
So the final thought for you listening, when you consider this incredible life, what does it suggest about our own potential? The potential for inner change and the impact one person can have generations later.
And maybe reflect on that balance he struck, the intense inward discipline versus the constant outward service. How do those two feed each other? Something powerful to think about.